Hi, and welcome to 15 Minutes on Pinot Noir. Now, Pinot Noir is probably not a variety that people immediately think of, a red grape variety they immediately think of when you think of Australian red wines. However, you should. It's a really exciting variety. There's been an incredible evolution of this variety over the last 10 to 20 years. Historically, a very, very difficult variety, notoriously fickle, challenging to grow, difficult to make well, but when it is made well and is grown well, it really delivers. It is one of the great grape varieties on the planet. So in today's episode, we're going to look at the history of Australian Pinot Noir, how it's grown, how it's made, and the major areas where it's grown, and you're likely to see them. And we've got a guest speaker beaming all the way in from Tasmania. So a quick snapshot of history. Pinot's been in the ground in Australia. It came with the Busby collection. So since the 1830s, there was a clone that reputedly came from Clos Vougeot, made its way into the vineyard sites of different parts of Australia. They call this the MV6 clone. Remember that clone. Old and historic, we don't use the term heritage clone, but I mean, it's appropriate here. That would be Australia's heritage clone. The 1920s saw Maurice O'Shea making some very classic wines and really interesting wines out of Pinot Noir or Pinot Noir base up in the Hunter Valley. Probably not the best area for Pinot Noir now. The 70s, not much happened. It's a cool climate variety. A lot of our original success were in warmer climates. The 70s, people started to play around with Pinot again. And then through the 80s, there was this push towards more cooler climate zones. The 1990s saw a lot of the classic French Dijon clones coming in. So you combine that with an enthusiasm to get Pinot in the right regions, the right vineyard sites within those regions, different clones coming in from France, and also now some vine age, and we're at a brilliant place. People know how to grow it better, they know how to make it better, and that's why I think it's a really exciting time for Pinot in Australia. Now, it's grown in more places than this map indicates, but these are the areas that are most famous in Australia and you're likely to come across in the global export markets. Yarra Valley, Mornington Peninsula, Adelaide Hills, and of course, there's something very special about Tasmania. So, dealing with Pinot, what you do need is cool climate. And in Australia, cool climate means either ocean influence, big important piece of the puzzle for Pinot in Australia, or altitude. And we'll see, getting up into higher vineyard sites where that does work as well. Now, in Tasmania, there's all sorts of it's a big GI, if you like. It's essentially an island appellation. Lots of different soil types, but we've got a special guest coming in, so there's no point me talking about Tasmania just yet. Probably the best known and probably the area that started to export the most Pinot initially and get sort of fame and notoriety for Pinot Noir would be Yarra Valley. Great tourist destination, very, very close to Melbourne. If you're a tennis fan, the Australian Open is on, and that's literally 45 minutes, and you're up in the Yarra Valley. Colourful history. It's become this great Pinot area, an evolving style though. Lots of different sites in Yarra Valley, but certainly a benchmark for Pinot in Australia right now. Mornington Peninsula, very diverse maritime climate, without a doubt. This is all about maritime influence. 50% of the vineyard sites in Mornington are planted to Pinot Noir, so this is without a doubt a go-to region for Pinot Noir in Australia. Probably less exported. You don't see quite as many Mornington wines out on the market as you do even Tasmania and Yarra Valley, but very, very important. And the coolest climate in the state of South Australia is Adelaide Hills. Very interesting German heritage. Very sort of late to the party in terms of being a region that was developed, but it was a cool climate region. And Pinot was planted and, was very successful with sparkling wine in the early days. Now it's a great place for quality varietal Pinot Noir. And then Tasmania, this beautiful island. But why have me talk about it? We've got Pete Caldwell. He's the vigneron from Dalrymple in Tasmania. Pete, nice to see you beaming all the way in from that absolute paradise they call Tasmania.
It is indeed. Yeah, no, it's at the moment, it's amazing. Our summer has really turned it on for us this year, and in the north of the state anyway. So we're really loving our wind up into the 2022 vintage so far. So
awesome.
Yes, very good.
So now tell me, growing Pinot, everyone says, it's notoriously difficult. You grow all sorts of other varieties, but is Pinot as hard as everyone says? Is it really fickle? Is it really about making sure it's in the right site?
Yeah, it is. It really is. If you've got there's a lot of things you can't do with Pinot that I think you can get away with other varieties, and I think. And it shows, because Pinot really only exists in its real definition as being really stylistic and complex and interesting to people when it's done really well. I think you can make some really lovely Shiraz and Cabernets from different regions, which all have wonderful character. With Pinot Noir, if it's not grown well, treated well, and with respect as far as yield and things go, the wheels fall off it very quickly, and it does not like heat very much. It can really burn out. So it runs in a very tight little band, and inside that very tight little band is even a smaller band where your heart gets broken and sometimes joy happens.
Well, so there was that book, The Heartbreak Grape. But I tell you what, though, it got me into the wine business, trying a great Pinot. Initially it was a Burgundy. I just thought, wow, I've never had a variety that made me feel something the way that Pinot does. And I do think there is that. You can have it so that it's juicy, it's forward, it's fruity. But the really great Pinots really have something ethereal and really, really special about them. Now, I don't think I've ever seen a variety where every winemaker you speak to who makes Pinot probably approaches it a little differently, and they're all right.
No, that's true. Absolutely. And I think it's, and I've seen you, been in it for such a reasonable amount of time now with some friends as well. And I think it's a matter of just feeling comfortable in your own skin with Pinot. It's one of those areas where you own a site. It really shows the site and where it grows. And I think you really become very close to that, and it becomes part of the identity of what you're doing and what you're trying to make. And I think site with Pinot Noir is really typical. That's why I think there's so many passionate Pinot producers who are all extremely excited about what they do themselves, because there's something in their wines which they connect to where they grow it. So I think that really end up with a room full of people who are just a little bit nuts at times.
And it's so hard to pick
the interesting ones.
And it's true about the site. When it's not like you go out and you see big broadacre farming of Pinot. Every Pinot region you go to is all about little pockets here and there, and it's about those individual site expressions. And on that note, I feel like, and maybe you can comment on this, I think maybe 10 years ago, there was a lot of people that were making a more restrained style of Pinot. That's when it started to happen. They're saying, we are making a more Burgundian style. I'm not hearing that anymore. And I like that I'm not hearing that anymore, because I feel like there's a confidence now where winemakers in Australia and the different regions they know what's going on in Burgundy. They're trying to make the best expression from the different sites in, say, Tasmania or Yarra Valley. I mean, are you seeing that too? It's less about trying to mimic.
I think so. I mean, I had 10 years in Martinborough where they make a very distinctive style, and worked in Burgundy for a couple of times. And I think Tassie, you come to Tassie, lucky you come later after I've learned a few things to see what the Tassie impression is on Pinot Noir. And I think you just adapt to that. You don't try to push it outside what it can and can't do. It's like, well, this is the interest around what the Tasmania influence is. And I think that's what people have evolved with. And as the vineyards have got older and have offered a bit more complexity as well, I think people have become very comfortable with the Tasmanian style. Is this sort of maybe a bit more acidity, a bit more perfume, a bit more brightness and things, rather than maybe some of the richer sort of tones that you get out of the Yarra and maybe some of the slightly warmer regions in comparison. I think that's, everyone uses their little strengths to highlight what they believe is their expressions. And for us, I think in Tassie, it's I think most people would appreciate it's got a very unique sort of drive and backbone to it.
Yeah, and now talk about Tasmania, because clearly, I mean, I always try to tell people, hey, next stop south of Tasmania is Antarctica. So we are talking, cold ocean, and people always think, they come to Australia, go, oh, Australia's really hot, isn't it? I said, well, except where it's not. And, there's parts of Tasmania that are distinctly not warm.
Correct. And I think, within Tassie, there was now we're getting people wanting to identify different regions of Tassie, and we already make 4 different Pinots from different sites around Tasmania, because, I recognise, I mean, you can see through Burgundy just how much they identify just the side of a hill. In Tassie, you've got the warm east coast, the dry southern sort of areas of the Coal River, and our warm and moist, more humid areas of the north. Why wouldn't they all be different? And then, we venture into the centre of Tasmania to one vineyard, which is sort of very hot and very dry, almost Otago-like in a way. and influencing the wine that way. So there's lots of, you know, so Tassie's quite, most people think you come down here for a weekend and zoom around it. And soon realise it's a bit more complex than that, and the wines are like that too. And they're opening up more and more with people venturing further out, because you only need a small patch of ground to have a bit of interest in Pinot or wine in Tassie, and I think that's opening up even more areas.
Yeah, no, it really is a very special place. And I think, like you said, there's different areas. It's a big enough area where eventually there will be sub-regions within Tasmania. But a fairly strong point right now is that there's a lot of sellability, if there's, for want of a better word. The word Tasmania, I tell you, living over here in the North America market, man, they love that word. Something special about Tasmania, like, oh, that sounds exciting. They're not even sure sometimes why, but it's like Tasmania sounds really exciting. So it's awesome.
We are lucky. We're by ourselves in a lot of ways.
Yeah, well, it's a great time to be drinking and experimenting. Well, I mean, it's a great time to be drinking Pinot from around the world, actually, because it used to be one place. We talked about Burgundy 20, 30 years ago. Now you don't. You have all sorts of other reference points, and it's nice that Australia is part of those reference points now, where people see that there's genuine cool climate. It's not just about, oh, we are cool climate, when that's kind of really not. It's genuine cool climate. It's an exciting time.
Yes, it is. It really is. And, you know, and it's just going to open up more, you know, and if the venture, I know it's outside what you're looking at, but, you know, the southwest of Western Australia is another interesting area that I've been to visit. So, you know, it's just growing. The tentacles of Pinot are reaching out to everyone. That's
awesome. Well, great. Well, I appreciate your time, Pete. Always a pleasure. I'm going to finish up with a couple of quick points here on Pinot in Australia and what to remember. So, the best examples, I think, coming from Australia right now are genuine cool climate regions and the sites within those regions. Think light to medium bodied. We're not talking about, it's hard to find. You've got to dig pretty hard to find a great big full bodied Pinot in Australia. Fruit forward and fragrant, and gastronomic flexibility. I'm an ex-sommelier. I call myself a lap sommelier, and I love working with Pinot Noir because it is incredibly flexible. You can have it with white meat dishes, seafood dishes, meat dishes. So it's always a pleasure. So that's Pinot. That's 15 minutes on Pinot. Thank you.